Ranger Log Number 50. Date: October 27th, 1986. Weather: dense fog, chill in the air like needles against the skin. Back in the autumn of '86, the forest breathed like a wounded animal, heavy with mist and secrets. I was still green back then, a few years into the job, but Appalachia has a way of growing you up fast. I was patrolling an old logging road that cut through the wild heart of the reserve, an overgrown artery snaking through dense woods older than history. The Jeep bucked and pitched, headlights slicing through the fog, though visibility was barely 10 feet at best. We'd had reports of strange lights in the sky for weeks, and more unsettling, rumors of cattle found gutted on remote farms just outside the forest's edge. But it wasn't until hikers started vanishing that I got the call to double down on my patrols. Radio in hand, I rolled the dial to check in, but static washed over every channel, a useless hum that made the hair stand up on my arms. It was the kind of interference you get only when something's wrong. I killed the engine and stepped out. The fog curled around me, damp and invasive, tasting like iron on the tongue. I held my flashlight in a white-knuckle grip, the other hand close to the revolver strapped to my side. The forest was dead quiet, not even the telltale rustle of nocturnal critters for company. Then it came. A hum. Deep, almost melodic, but too sinister, too unnatural. It resonated in the pit of my gut like the groan of a loaded freight train in the distance. I scanned the tree line, and a metallic taste of dread settled over my tongue. Out here, a sound like that doesn't belong. I took a step forward, boots squelching in the mud, when 2 points of light ignited in the mist ahead. Not lights, eyes. Crimson, glowing like the embers of a dying fire. They floated, suspended, a good 12 feet off the ground. I couldn't tell if they belonged to a thing standing on 2 legs or something airborne, but I knew one thing. They were looking right at me. I raised my flashlight, the beam flickering with every breath. The mist seemed to twist around those eyes, swallowing the light before it reached them. Then the flashlight stuttered and died. I cursed under my breath, heart beating too loud for comfort. The hum thickened, louder now, and I became aware of a sound I hadn't noticed before, the steady rustle of something massive unfolding, like canvas sheets in a storm. A blur of motion swept through the fog to my left, and I swung around, revolver drawn. Nothing. A shape rippled again, further back, and then came a screech. Sharp and cutting through the cold like broken glass. It echoed through the hills, and for a moment, I remembered old stories my grandfather used to tell. Tales of winged things that roamed these mountains long before people laid roads through them. Suddenly, I heard a ragged shout. Human. A man's voice, rough and full of terror. I pivoted, breaking into a run, the flashlight banging uselessly against my chest. The road dipped down toward a clearing with an old iron bridge that spanned a creek choked with dead leaves. I reached the edge of the clearing just as a figure stumbled from the underbrush, tripping over his own feet. The guy couldn't have been older than 20, his hair matted to his head, face pale and wild-eyed. His jacket was shredded, and there were gashes across his cheek like he'd run through barbed wire. He crashed into me, gasping, clutching at my uniform.
The bridge,
he rasped.
It's at the bridge.
I didn't have time to ask what it was. The hum surged, so loud now it felt like it would split the earth open, and the ground trembled beneath us. I shoved the kid behind me, revolver ready. Then I saw it. Rising from the creek bed, through the shroud of mist, came a shadow that shouldn't have been possible. Wings. Enormous and black, veined like the sails of a ghost ship. They unfurled, spanning the length of the bridge and more, cutting the air with a slow grace. The creature had no face I could make out, but those eyes, they burned, watching, calculating. It hovered in place, the hum resonating from somewhere deep in its chest, a sound like power lines about to snap. I forced myself to stay steady, revolver aimed. The kid behind me whimpered, his nails digging into my back, but the creature didn't dive or attack. It seemed almost curious, or maybe it was judging us, as if weighing our worth against some invisible measure. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. The fog twisted around its wings, darkened by something ancient and unknowable. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the Mothman, because what the hell else could it be, lifted higher, vanishing into the mist. The hum faded with it, leaving behind a silence so pure it felt like I'd gone deaf. The young man crumpled, finally letting out a sob that broke whatever spell had been cast over me. I managed to haul him back to the Jeep, muscles trembling. He wouldn't talk much, just kept repeating how he and his friends had been dared to find the old bridge, how the lights in the sky had drawn them in like moths to flame. He wouldn't say what had happened to his friends, but I got the impression he didn't think they were coming back. I drove us to the ranger station, radio finally coming back to life with frantic chatter. The whole drive, I kept expecting to see those eyes in the rearview mirror, burning through the fog. Later that night, I sat in my cabin, revolver on the table, listening. Every creak of the woods, every whisper of the wind, felt like a warning from something that defied reason. The Mothman is a story as old as Appalachia. Some say a harbinger, some say a curse. I don't know what it was trying to tell us. But sometimes, not knowing is worse.